I'm very happy to be here. It's a great place and great people, and I truly mean it.
Fantastic.
What if the loudest feud in martial arts history never actually happened? One man trained in silence, sweating on blood-stained mats in Thailand. The other built a legend behind closed doors, shrouded in secrets and whispered tales of CIA ops and spiritual enlightenment. Jean-Claude Van Damme continued in that same calm, reflective tone, saying that Seagal had built his entire image around a mythology. And while that was common in Hollywood, what crossed the line for Van Damme was when Seagal used that mythology to tear others down. It wasn't just pretending to be tough on screen, Van Damme said. It was pretending to be better than people who lived it. He didn't slam Seagal for using Aikido or for being an actor first. What truly upset him, he revealed, was Seagal's consistent effort to discredit the skills, experiences, and training of others, while himself avoiding any real testing of his abilities. I took hits. I bled. I trained. That's the price you pay for the discipline, Van Damme said. What price did he pay? The magazine interview, published quietly at first, soon went viral after excerpts were translated into English and picked up by major entertainment outlets. The martial arts world reacted swiftly. Forums lit up with support for Van Damme, while others debated whether Seagal's background had ever been what he claimed. Clips from old interviews resurfaced, Seagal talking about killing people in covert ops or dismissing other martial artists as movie dancers. It was like watching a curtain being pulled back. What had always been framed as a Hollywood rivalry suddenly looked more like a one-sided crusade, with Van Damme finally choosing to call it for what it was. After the interview, neither Van Damme nor Seagal said anything more. The big announcement teased in the Instagram post? It never came. No movie, no documentary, no final fight. Some insiders claimed there had been talks about a film. Something raw, reflective, even experimental. A two-man dialogue-driven drama about aging warriors confronting their legacy. But if it was real, it evaporated after the interview dropped. Perhaps the truth was too sharp, or perhaps the moment passed. The dust had barely settled on the action cinema of the early 90s when Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal ascended into public consciousness. To audiences, they were warriors. Van with his dazzling aerial kicks and raw determination, and Seagal with his subtle, lethal Aikido, a martial artist whose calm exterior concealed lethal technique. But behind the scenes, a simmering feud thrummed between them, a feud that would stretch across decades, ripple through Hollywood circles, and ultimately culminate in a quiet declaration of truth. For years, neither Van Damme nor Seagal acknowledged the rivalry publicly. Fans debated, gossip columns hinted at tension, but the two stars steered clear of each other. No shared press junkets, no joint conventions, no overlapping interviews. Producers quietly warned against booking them for the same event. And insiders whispered, these two men, both masters of martial arts and cinema, couldn't be in the same room. It was a cold rift that avoided explosion, until it almost did. The turning point came one warm summer evening at the sprawling grounds of Stallone's Bel Air estate. It was 1997 and the guest list glittered. Schwarzenegger, Willis, Lundgren, Van Damme, Chan. The pantheon of action. Seagal arrived with a quiet confidence. Nodding greetings, his posture relaxed but alert. Van Damme, handsome and athletic, moved through the crowd, trading smiles and high fives. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered. Perhaps this would be the evening that ended the Cold War. It wasn't to be. Somewhere between the open bar and the live band, Seagal made an offhand comment. According to those present, he quipped to the assembled circle something like, "I respect real fighters, not those who learned in ballet studios." A foolhardy joke? Perhaps. But when Van Damme heard it, his jaw tightened. The source was unmistakable and everyone felt the room go still. At that moment, a fuse lit. Van Damme was known for discipline, punishing training regimens, solitary early morning sessions, relentless private sparring. He embodied classic martial artist tropes: honor, sweat, sacrifice. Seagal, conversely, hailed from the opposite spectrum: methodical, composed, cerebral, PR savvy. He could weave tales of undercover missions, government work, secret hand-to-hand style. Some believed him, others saw it for what it was: myth-making. Van Damme swallowed his irritation for the rest of the evening. But just as the night was closing and most guests drifted toward the mansion's rear exit, destiny brought them together. The small clearing beyond the patio, twinkling with string lights, became their stage. Seagal was standing, sipping a drink. Van Damme stepped forward and, reportedly in a cool, composed tone, said, "Enough talk. Let's go outside. Right now." The hush that fell was palpable. Guests froze in place. Stallone locked eyes with both, then raised his hand silently, urging calm. A direct challenge at Stallone's party. Regardless of intent, whether cinematic bravado or genuine confrontation, it was singular. For years, fans had whispered about the silent war between the two icons. Now it collided into reality. The tension lurked in the air like fog. Seagal, to the astonishment of watchers, laughed, as though the concept was beneath him, not worthy of response. He smiled a thin, dismissive grin, and he moved on. That act spoke volumes. One man dared to test the other, and the other ignored it. But Van Damme wasn't satisfied with a single try. As fate would have it, the pair ended up head-to-head again later that night at an after-party in Hollywood Hills. Van Damme repeated his challenge, still direct, still unamused. Again, nothing. Seagal skirted the confrontation. The drama radiated across the elite gathering. What started as an evening of celebration had become a reframed spotlight on honor and avoidance. Stories spread the next morning. Stallone confirmed the incident in hushed tones. Van Damme challenged him, and Seagal walked away. To Hollywood, that meant something. Challenge accepted or refused signified truth about who possessed the courage to step into a battle of skill. Seagal's retreat was read by some as self-protective, protective of his brand, by others as evidence of cowardice. And armed with that, Van Damme pressed his silence into action. But the world of action stars doesn't remember single moments for long. In Hollywood, the 90s bled into the 2000s. Genre tastes evolved, comic book spectacles and espionage plots displaced bare-knuckle fights. Van Damme rode the wave, taking roles in martial arts dramas, producing under-the-radar action pieces, and remaining a physical specimen in public appearances. Seagal, in contrast, drifted straight to DVD sequels, license plate cameos, occasional conventions. The defining moment of a career often came as marketers capitalized on online nostalgia. Then came talk of a final, definitive showdown, a sanctioned, no-script, real martial arts bout staged in Las Vegas. By many accounts, Peter Guber, a high-rolling producer with Hollywood shadow power, pitched a $20 million purse for each man. It would be public, televised, conclusive, face-to-face, glove-to-glove, fan-to-fan. Hollywood salted with old school versus new bravado. The offer was real. Van Damme said yes. Seagal reportedly declined, or just didn't respond, and the once-in-a-generation opportunity evaporated. The world would never know whether Van Damme's spinning kicks or Seagal's subtle locks would dominate. Instead, the fight myth locked into legend. More than 2 decades later, in late 2023, Van Damme stirred the pot again with a single photograph. A birthday dinner hosted by Seagal in Beverly Hills. The image showed them seated side by side, Van Damme smiling courteously, Seagal remaining poker-faced. The Instagram caption, "Thank you, Steven, and your family for the fantastic dinner. Big announcement coming soon." It exploded. Fans spun narratives: movie reunion, final verbal spar,
Nice.
documentary, true reconciliation. Instead, Van Damme described it as observation. He wanted to see if the man had changed. Perhaps he hoped for shared laughter, 2 aging icons reliving stories, or even genuine brotherhood. Instead, he saw the same distant exterior, the old guard preserved. Vague gratitude, controlled public posture. Polite, but impersonal. The big announcement offered the tantalizing possibility of a narrative rise, only for nothing to follow. No teaser, no script, no press release, no footage of joint interviews or laughs. Mere resonance. Given Seagal's refusal of the Las Vegas fight and the silent challenge at Stallone's estate, many fans interpreted the post as a long-shot olive branch or bait designed to ignite curiosity. Then came Van Damme's low-key but seismic Euro Marshal interview. Photo shoot in a simple dojo. Interview corridor painted in muted tones. No lights, no red carpets, no PR entourage. He spoke quietly. Through measured sentences, he unspooled decades of tension. He called Seagal a fraud, citing the contrast between myth and reality. He spoke of his own journey. Tournament bouts, cracked ribs, busted noses, real opponents, real wins, and real scars. He explained that calling out Seagal's counterfeit claims, done with diplomacy, respect, academics, was important not just for his own honor, but for martial arts itself. His voice was steady. He didn't trot out combat bragging. He didn't name names, but his meaning was unmistakable. Van Damme concluded with a reflection that transcended spite. That 30 years of silence, provocation, partial engagement, expectation, and myth had distilled into a moment of clarity. He didn't want destruction, but truth. Seagal's prolonged silence, Van Damme implied, speaks louder than any stunt. A fighter's courage is tested by action, not Instagram, not PR. Once the interview dropped, ripples traveled fast. Reddit boards flamed. On r/martial arts, a user wrote, "Van Damme finally said it, that's all he needed. Seagal never fought in tournaments. Zero proof of covert combat, it's all marketing spin." Mixed responses followed. Some praised Van Damme for honesty, others questioned whether calling Seagal a fraud oversimplified years of public goodwill and ambiguous biography. But consensus held, Van Damme had changed the narrative, from speculation to first-person account. News outlets ran features. Podcast hosts invited scholars to discuss legacy, mythology, and brand building in martial arts cinema. Seagal stayed silent, no statements, no ghosted contributions to interview requests. A reclusive silence far more telling than any rebuttal might have been. In a world where actions matter most, silence can scream. Archive fans began a collective archive hunt. Interviews from 2001, tweets from 2010, old fan videos from early conventions. No seeds of apologies, no tender reunion. Just enabling silence. This silence confirmed what Van Damme had hinted at. Some truths cannot be spotlighted without shadows. Van Damme, meanwhile, took up a new role as elder statesman. He hosted small workshops in Europe. He curated short documentaries exploring the lives of martial artists who never made it to Hollywood, those who trained full contact, competed internationally, and paid blood for art. He spoke about truth, humility, authenticity. His puncheries now served martial culture, not box office. Seagal, on the public's radar, became a hard-to-locate figure. Insiders once buzzed about him launching his own advocacy for Aikido's cinematic potential. Others claimed he was negotiating sporadic convention reappearances in Asia. Some said he was preparing a memoir, but none reached Western press with claims of policing his legacy, a master responding to Van Damme's revelations. In martial arts cinema, myth is both engine and shackle. Legends, hard-to-prove stories of covert combat, espionage, battlefield bravery, captivate fans and inflate legacies. Van Damme had chosen at the 11th hour to challenge the mythology. It's the kind of act more courageous than any screen brawl, calling myth making myth. Seagal's legacy, action star, Aikido practitioner, hero to many, is now bifurcated. To some, he's the calm wizard of defense, the quiet certitude in combat. To others, he's the man who built a legend on silence and myth. Both images may persist, Hollywood's tale is never one note. In contrast, Van Damme relinquished that mythology. He embraced transparency. He accepted that he would be remembered not only for his flying kicks, but for calling out false posturing. And that declaration, single word, simple, fraud, carried weight precisely because it was so rare to speak such truth. As months turned into years, the silence between Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal became more than just a rivalry. It became a metaphor, a cipher for something far larger than two aging martial artists with diverging philosophies. The world had changed. The once dominant action stars had become living relics, symbols of an era where might met mystique. In the absence of a final confrontation, their feud took on an almost mythical status. Less about fists and more about identity, truth, and the fabric of public storytelling. Van Damme, in his reflective years, began to understand that this narrative was never really about defeating Seagal in a ring. It was about defining what martial arts actually meant, what it had always meant to him. For Van Damme, martial arts wasn't only a method of physical engagement. It was discipline, suffering, balance. His earliest memories were of sweat-covered mats and bruised limbs, of humble instructors speaking in firm whispers about control and honor. Every kick, every form, every ritualized bow was tied to something ancient and sacred. He had bled for that ideal. By contrast, Seagal seemed to embody something that irked Van Damme, not because of envy, but because of distortion. Seagal came from stories without sources, whispers about secret ops, black belts conferred in closed rooms. He seemed to represent that peculiar Hollywood phenomenon of performance overriding proof. Over the years, Seagal had built a wall around himself, never directly confronting critics, never correcting the record, never fully opening his process. It was all enigma, polished just enough to sell. And in a world obsessed with narrative, the market chose mystery over method. Van Damme saw it all and held his peace, for a time. But silence, he learned, is a breeding ground for decay. And the more martial arts became a genre rather than a practice, the more he felt the urge to speak. Not from ego, but from duty. He began to travel, quietly, anonymously. He walked through small dojos in Thailand, Brazil, and Tunisia, meeting teachers who had never tasted fame but had shaped generations. He filmed them, he documented their routines. He asked them questions that most reporters never bothered with. What does courage look like when no one is watching? What do you say to a student who is losing their spirit? What does a real fight cost a man, inside and out? He was building a case, not against Seagal, but for martial arts itself. In the background, he felt the ghost of his rival's silence. And still, there was no word. Seagal hadn't responded to the dinner post, the interview, or the quiet wave of conversation now buzzing through fan communities. Not a single word. It was a curious contrast. Van Damme out in the open, in villages and training camps, giving away what he had learned. And Seagal somewhere in shadow, his legend preserved by the very act of non-participation. In time, it became clear to Van Damme that perhaps Seagal was never going to reply. Not because he lacked the vocabulary, but because he didn't see the need. Maybe for Seagal, the fight had already been won, not by confrontation, but by longevity. He still had his followers, his version of truth. And that was enough. But Van Damme had chosen a different path. His documentary series, tentatively titled Roots of Combat, debuted quietly on a streaming platform known for cultural deep dives. It followed no single story arc, had no explosive scenes, no dramatized showdowns. It simply documented old fighters training, young kids learning to fall correctly, women in war-torn regions learning self-defense, grandmasters showing age-worn techniques that could disable a man with one wrist twist. In one scene, Van Damme visits a humble dojo in Okinawa, where a 78-year-old master teaches his granddaughter Keita under a rusted tin roof. No words are exchanged, just slow movement, breath, stillness. The series became a sleeper hit, Not because of hype, but because of hunger. People wanted truth. They wanted discipline that didn't come with a brand deal. And in that space, Van Damme's voice resonated. Not the booming voice of a star, but the cracked voice of a man who had lived his lessons. As the series gained traction, media circled back. Interviews, podcasts, requests. One reporter asked, "Why now? Why speak out after all this time?" Van Damme paused, his hands folded. "Because silence only serves the liar," he replied. "And because I don't want the next generation of fighters to grow up thinking Instagram belts are the same as earned belts." The answer went viral. Fans took it as a thinly veiled shot at Seagal, but Van Damme never confirmed that. He was done with calling names. He never mentioned Van Damme, never clarified. In one rare appearance at a martial arts expo in Bucharest, someone asked about the Stallone Party Challenge. Seagal didn't respond with facts. He simply laughed and walked away. For Van Damme, that was confirmation enough. If truth was a dojo, Seagal had chosen to stay outside its walls. But Van Damme wasn't bitter. In fact, as the months passed, he seemed lighter, leaner. He would often say in interviews, "The burden of truth is heavy only when you carry it alone. But once you speak it, it walks beside you." He smiled more, trained harder, and at 64, he pulled off a full 360 jump spin for a local youth martial arts camp. The kids erupted. No need for fanfare, just joy. Then came the final act, a film based loosely on the past. Not a biopic, not even an action film, but a character study titled The Shadow Challenge. A story of two martial artists, one bound by myth, the other by memory, who are set on a collision course that never physically materializes. Van Damme's position seems clear. He's not hunting attention. He's pursuing narrative resolution. He's publishing books on real martial arts culture. He's producing web series. He's lending his name to documentaries about unsung combat athletes. Some say he's where he belongs. Seagal's silence remains enigmatic. Conventions in Japan, Russia, occasionally Asia, remain open. But unlike the old public battles, there's no chase for headlines. He's letting history settle, or waiting for a better moment. Elsewhere, a man in shadow leans back in a chair, voice muffled. He watches old films, contemplates interviews that never came, doesn't respond, doesn't strike. That too is a message. Jean-Claude Van Damme didn't seek closure through controversy. He sought it through honesty. He stepped into history's ring when it mattered and called lies out, not with fury, but with calm authority. That, perhaps, is more martial than any headline brawl, because at the end of the day, the strongest move is truth. If this story made you rethink the legends you grew up watching, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold truths behind the icons you thought you knew.